So why don't we go ahead and get started? It is 6:04 p.m. on the 15th of July. This is a weekly or the Finance Committee meeting of the town of Halifax. On the call from the Halifax Committee is Cheryl Burke, Frank Johnston, Ed Bryan, and myself, Jim Walters. Just a couple of housekeeping items. This meeting is being recorded
Did you
by
forget me?
Cheryl. I thought I said Cheryl Burke.
I didn't hear you.
Okay. All right. So Cheryl Burke is on. So this meeting is being recorded by Area 58. Due to this is a video meeting, all votes will be done by roll call vote. And we are not in attendance. Hang on, that's Bill. Bill will not be able to make it this evening. 6:06. All right. Okay, so we will move into the agenda. We have meeting minutes to be approved, both from July 8th and June 11th. The June 11th ones were sent out last night. So starting with July 8th, has everybody had an opportunity to read through those? And are there any adds, changes, or deletions?
No, so that's fine.
Okay. So, all right, can I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes of the Finance Committee from July 8th?
So moved.
Thank you, Cheryl. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Frank. Roll call vote. EJ?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes, minutes from July the 8th, 2024.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Yes.
Thank you, Cheryl. And I am also a yes, so that will pass 4-0. All in favor. Have we had a chance to look at June 11th? I mean, they did just come out last night. If we haven't had an opportunity, we can push that to the next meeting. If you haven't had a chance to read them, let me know.
I read them.
Okay.
Same.
Cheryl?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I had a look at them too this morning. So can I get a motion to, is there any adds, changes, or deletions to those minutes?
No.
Nope, look good to me.
Very good. Thank you. Can I get a motion to approve the meeting minutes for June 11th?
So moved.
Thank you, Cheryl. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ed.
Oh.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Frank?
Yes on the meeting minutes from June the 14th, 2024.
Thank you, sir. EJ?
Yes.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Yes.
Thank you. And I'm a yes also. So those will be approved 4-0. All right. So that includes item 1 on the agenda. Next item we have are the line item transfers. So we'll start with the ITD data processing, where the request is moving $8,000 from legal to ITD data processing. Cody, any information on that, or is Caesar going to speak to this?
This one is primarily this is our main IT expense account. So all of our licenses, our renewals, so on and so forth. This one's being driven primarily by our financial system. So we started migrating mid-year. That was about a $10,000 increase that we hadn't necessarily anticipated. We initially had thought we would be able to absorb it because we did add a little bit of a buffer when we did the fiscal year 24 budget. But as Caesar got in the renewals for a lot of our other things, which are mid-year, those were all around 5%. And caused the price, caused the budget to go over here. So Caesar can give more specifics. I think he's on here. I asked him to attend, but that's kind of the main reason for that one.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Caesar, do you have any color to add to that?
No, Cody just hit it on the nail. Aside from that, we budget, a certain amount for hardware replacement as things break or break down. As we all know, things have gotten a little far more expensive than anticipated. That also includes my supplies that are in there, and just to replace my toner, which I did once this year, was like more than double what it normally is. So, like I said, aside from the overage because of certain renewals coming in higher, because we can only plan so much and build in so much, those mid-year renewals, on top of the increased supply, costs, that added to the
Mm-hmm.
hit. But other than that, that's basically all the that I have to say on that one.
So are these subscription services or subscription licenses like Microsoft, and are we buying them in bulk as a government agency for like a lower cost, or are we buying them individually?
What do you mean? So this doesn't include the Microsoft. Well, do you mind clarifying? Like, what are you asking? What?
So what's costing us an $8,000 more?
Well,
I mean-
aside from the increased cost, what we normally spend on our regular hardware. If someone's printer breaks, we have to replace it. If someone needs it
Okay.
repaired, we have to fix it. So
Okay.
the time and materials for that, the time and materials to either potentially replace it, but also my office supplies like toner, stuff like that. All that's in the loop. As far as the licensing,
Uh-huh.
like we have pretty much any software in the town comes out of my budget, with the exception of just a few.
Sure.
A lot of those renewals that we have mid-year came because I try to get the proposal for our budget season, which we start in October.
Uh-huh.
Some of them might not happen until a year after that.
Okay.
Basically mid-year for us, the current fiscal year. So by the time it hits them, there might be an additional $2,000 or $3,000 on the license costs that obviously we couldn't budget in.
Right.
So I think, Jim, it's to, I think, answer your question, most of our procurement for software and things like that, we do through with the state contract. So the state goes out and bids, solicit proposals for
Yeah.
basically lower prices on
Yeah.
behalf of cities and towns. So that's where we work with vendors to procure that are on the state contract and
Sure.
get the lower prices there
Sure.
through through governmental
Okay.
prices.
So it's like on the state backdrop contract for the network pieces, right?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
All the
Okay.
software, all those licensing are purchased under the, I think it's ITC 73 or something like that. ITT.
ITS 73.
There,
Thank you.
there you go.
Yeah.
Too many. There's too many. There's always a third letter that they have. IT something.
Right. Right.
Yep.
Well, I guess so. Just to be clear about my question, I just want to make sure we weren't buying standard like commercial grade licenses,
No,
and we were getting
no.
the .gov or .edu costs that are out there.
Correct.
Yes.
Who do we use for a reseller of that? Do you know?
So for most of our regular like licensing, we use SHI. We've been using them. I have an amazing relationship with them. We've been using them since I pretty much started. The town was already using them when I got here, and that's who we use for like. Then you have a couple of other ones like that are more that are direct. They don't work. I've tried getting them onto with SHI, but they're through state contract. They don't do reselling. They do direct only.
Yeah.
We just did our online permitting through zones, EJ. So one of the things we're trying to do for some of our items is you may have multiple resellers on the state contract. So getting quotes from those multiple resellers. So for the online permitting, for instance, we got 3 proposals from different resellers. We actually saved like $4,000 from what we initially thought it was going to be just by going through different resellers. So we try to do that when it's feasible too.
Yep.
All right. Anyone have any other questions on the first line item transfer?
So I
Yeah.
guess we can anticipate FY 25 to have an increase again in this particular line item. Is that correct?
I'm a lot more confident now that we're in the new fiscal year and I've already gotten, I'm about to process some renewals. Our SHI team has been able to actually go less than what we paid for last year and less than what they proposed. So I'm not expecting that the licensing will actually have any effect on us this year.
So, Frank, the one thing just to add to that, and Caesar, I'm sure you're aware of this. I'm familiar with this at the state level. It's kind of the space that I'm in. The one thing to caution ourselves on is, even though we're resold and bound through SHI, some of the contracts that we have for some of the providers, Microsoft as the example here, they can pretty much increase their cost whenever they deem necessary, not necessarily. Yep. So it's not tied into the SHI contract that we have.
Or IT, or the state contract, you mean?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just something to be aware of, that I think actually within the last 6 months or so, Microsoft just increased their license rates and whatnot. So it's just be mindful of that, I guess, going into FY25, that it's not a guarantee that this isn't going to happen again in terms of the increases.
That's a good point. I mean, I can tell you that SHI does a very, very good job at trying to minimize the effect. I mean, they, like I said, we have a good relationship with them. I can tell you more times than not, they've pretty much bitten the bullet when it comes to trying to get us to a price mark where we're at, for the simple fact that it's not in our budget.
Right.
So, EJ makes a good point. They're a reseller. They get the quote from the company that we're getting it from, and they have to work with that. They're not determining the base cost, essentially.
Yeah, it's a tough one to track.
Certainly is. All right.
All right.
Any other questions, Cheryl?
No.
Anything? Okay. All right. Then can I get a motion to approve the line item transfer for $8,000 from legal to ITD processing?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Cheryl. EJ?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes, on the IT data processing for 8,000.
Cheryl?
Yes.
And I'm a yes also, so that is approved for nothing.
Jim, were you gonna send that out electronically again, or do you want me to?
I got it. Now I got them all lined up, so it just goes out as one whole document, the four that you sent earlier.
Okay, perfect.
So
Is there any
these are
way
all-
you guys can sign those tonight? Technically, the state deadline is today, that those have to be signed.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Yeah, I can
as soon as
sign.
we're done voting, I'll send it out. It should take about maybe 10 or 15 minutes to hit everybody's inbox. And we should be able to sign it and get it back to you. Because as soon as it's done, we all get a copy of the finished document. However, with Michael and Bill not being in, should I drop their names off?
You can, as long as the majority of the committee signs it,
Okay.
and technically they could still sign it as long as the committee approves it.
Right.
So, you could send it out to them, and as long as everyone here tonight signs it, that's sufficient for us to pass on to do the actual transfer.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've got yours in my Cody you sent out in my queue. I was gonna do it after we discussed it.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I appreciate it. I just, it technically, if something is dated the next day, it's invalid per the state, even if you approved it on today's date.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah. So one of the things with electronic signatures, obviously it's all recorded. So
Right.
it's not like coming to the office where you approved it today and then
Right.
you sign it tomorrow. Now there's kind of proof that you signed it a different date. So.
Right. Date and
Yeah.
time. Right. All right.
Okay, so that one is done. On to the next line item transfer for telephone/communications. We are moving 9,500 from the building inspector wages to the communication telephone line item.
So I will let Caesar take this one because he can explain it a lot better than I can.
Sure.
So Caesar.
Thank you, Cody. So the this account, which is the bane of my existence, the primary reason for the overage on this account, and I take responsibility for this, is merely because we have, so before we moved over to our current new phone system, which is our current one that we're using across the town, we were on Verizon Centrics. That Verizon Centrics also had, on top of everyone's desk phones and the whole 9 yards, it also included a lot of our public safety lines, not 911 specifically, but all of our public safety lines at police or fire that we need to maintain at copper level, or at the time we did 2 years ago. And then it also includes our fax lines, our alarm lines, pretty much a lot of things that I haven't cut over to 8x8 yet in some degree, which is our existing phone provider. And that is the biggest chunk. That's about, I would say, about $3,000 to $4,000 right there of that overage. The other portion of that overage is specifically due to just adding lines throughout the year that, whether it be for new positions that either I wasn't aware of or wasn't initially anticipated. Some of the lines if there's a vacant position for an extended amount of time, I'll use animal control officer and building inspector, for instance. I deactivate them, but they're still on the account, so that we reserve the number, so that decreases the amount of money that it's like $10 a month compared to the $50 that we would normally spend. So it's not literally 50; it's less than that. Just using it as a figure. So as positions come on, it's those smaller ones that those new lines, and as well as the ones that we deactivate and reactivate in the middle of the year, that I unfortunately did not account for. And then on top of that, which is the other portion of the other half, is we have an increase obviously in services, just for the Verizon /8x8 / our cell carrier, which is AT&T, regular service increases that are small when you're looking at it individually, but are a little bit larger when you're looking at it as a whole. And then the stuff that we can't control, and those amounts, I try to work with our providers regularly to try to keep them down at a fair rate, so there's not much as a hit to the budget. The other portion of that is our regulatory fees. With our newer phone system, it's all cloud-based, it's all VoIP, and those, the FCC regulates that a lot harder than a regular copper line. So our regular copper line services and surcharges and regulatory fees, they're not as much, and there's not as much of an increase on those than there are on our regular VoIP ones. I was just looking at our previous bills, and we've, over the course of about a year and a half, we've gone up almost $100 so a month just on our 8x8, and all those are regulatory fees that I have no control over. We're not exempt from them. And when I added it up, we're looking at about a $9,800 increase. I did the math right before the call, looking at our previous years.
One of the things too that Caesar didn't touch on is that I've tasked him with over the next month or so is going through an inventory of really our lines. We have, when I look at the bills, we have an awful lot of phone lines and cell phones and so on and so forth. And so, and it might be warranted, a lot of those might be to positions and that need them. But we're going to really go through, identify, which phones are for which person, and make sure that everyone who has one really needs one. For instance, we don't need administrative assistants, don't need a cell phone from the town. So going through and making sure that those things are being reviewed, which they haven't been done in a few years, I think will help as well.
I also want to add, thank you, Cody. Yes, that is happening. I also want to add that as far as the Verizon portion, I was telling Cody, a couple times, and I confirmed it today, that I am in the process of kind of just going in and starting to do all the number transfers, so they're all in one system. So we kind of pretty much lean Verizon as much as we can. It means our alarm lines. I'm working on working with the alarm company and appropriate department heads, make sure those lines get carried over without issue, so that way they're not on, we're not getting them on that bill. But and I expect for that to initiate, as in carry everything over by the end of this month, and then the effects for that to start happening in August, billing wise. And then there was one other point I wanted to bring up. There are some lines that we're paying for out of our regular communications account, but I'm expecting to offset those to the other departments. So an example is our COA. We never had GATRA. Now that we have GATRA, we're able to offset that cost. So any of the lines we pay for the vans, the van drivers to have while they're on, working out in the field, those costs will then be turned over to get supplemented by GATRA. So that's going to be another decrease onto our regular communications line that we would normally be paying for out of the budget.
Caesar, is that a swap that can happen at any point in time during the course of the year, or are they bound by contract in any way that we have to wait to a certain point?
No, I can do it at any time. Like take them off. Like they would stay on the account. They would just be billed. Basically, the COA would get a copy of the bill, or internally, I don't know how that would work. Cody could probably elaborate on how something like that work, because we're still going to keep it under our account. It's not going to go anywhere else. In theory, if we kept it on there, it's more or less of an internal accounting. Hey, we're going to tell GATRA you need to reimburse us for these lines, basically.
Okay. So the reimbursement will.
Yeah, but we can take them, but we won't be taking them out of our budget, assuming that there's money already in our account for GATRA stuff. But Cody can probably elaborate on that. One way or another, we're either going to get reimbursed for it or we're going to pay for it out of money they send us.
Yeah, I was going to say contractually, Cody, how's that written into the agreement that was signed a while back?
So they will reimburse us, but it's not, we can't use it to pay for. So the state law requires that the money that we get goes back into the general fund. So it'll just serve as revenue for the town.
Right.
So we certainly will get reimbursed, but we'll still need to budget for it. It's still an expense that the town will see. And then, we'll bill them, if it's $200 a month, that'll just be part of the assessment ultimately that they pay to us. And then at the end of the year that'll contribute in our revenues. So you won't see an offset in the account per se, but we will get revenue for it.
Yeah, and I had one other question. How many fax line do we have in town hall and other departments, and how many times do we actually use fax lines anymore?
Do you really want to know the answer to that question?
Absolutely, I want to know the answer to that question.
So for fax lines, so we did move a portion of our fax lines over to so we have a separate eFax system that we started moving our fax lines over. I would say, including the ones we moved over and the ones that we haven't, we're looking at about a total of 12 to 15 fax lines. And we probably moved over 5 at this point.
And what's the traffic on those fax lines in and out?
So, when you talk about the town hall, that can vary depending on what accidentally gets sent to us. People look us up for Cushman Insurance, and we end up getting registration and titles, even though they're not looking at the right result. I know our for like a health insurance stuff and our anything benefits related, the treasurer collector's office uses the fax line a lot. The town clerk's office may use it often for certain birth, her vital records and election stuff. But aside from regular use, like need to day to day, would be our police and fire and our library. Oh, and our police, fire, COA, and library. The usage on those is far more significant than the other departments, because our COA handles a lot of the state insurance stuff that they do for residents. our police and fire use it to communicate with the court systems, DA's office, the dispatch. Same thing with fire. And then our library uses it obviously for public use.
I would think that town hall should maybe have one central line.
That's what it is now. So in town hall, so I found this out a couple years ago that there were certain departments that actually had fax lines like hooked up, installed, ready to go. I just never hooked them up because when we replaced their device, it was never asked. They just used the downstairs one, but they actually had fax lines, fax numbers, and they didn't even know. So, like I said, a lot of those, I'm going through and finding out which ones are actually actively being used. But the town hall one, which is the ends in 7684, that is the quote unquote central one. It's what most departments use. That one is going to remain central, and the individual, like our treasurer collector's office, does have their own fax line that's been cut over. We're just in the process of going through and saying, no, this is how you have to do it. They just need a refresher on it. Right now, they just use the physical fax machine because that's easiest for them.
And one more question, and maybe
Sure.
Chief can answer this one. With the new communication center we're utilizing for our emergencies, why would we not be electronically tied to that versus using the old school fax lines for communication with the central communication?
So, like I said, the chief might be able to be more specific as it relates to his department, but a lot of the stuff that we get sent from the Rock to us via fax is most of the time court related, and as far as sending them electronically, that might be something that may happen with the new CAD system that we're working on. But the only answer I can give to that off the top of my head would be it's just how it is. It could be regulatory, it could be for regulatory reasons. It could be that's what the state requires them to do. I'm not entirely sure.
So the state has guidelines on any information that's being sent electronically, just kind of sees it to brush on what you're talking about here, that it's got to meet certain encryption standards as it relates to PII. So if there's personal information as far as names, addresses, social security numbers, things like that, as long as within the Microsoft suite that we operate, we have encryption rules set up. You can move to scan and send essentially and eliminate the fax machines. Yeah. But they're not mandated. They're not mandated by the state, but they're pretty firm guidelines that they highly recommend that folks follow when they're trying to go down that path.
Yeah, and a lot of it could be that because the Rock is an entirely separate entity, they have their own systems. It could be that because they have 7 other communities, that's the only, in the state's eyes, while I disagree with it, is the safest and most secure method of transportation of that information, that it was easier to standardize on that one that every community had versus trying to delve into which community had which certain product and vice versa. That, like I said, that's the only thing I can think of off the top of my head. But I don't disagree that we should look at electronic methods.
Well, the preferred, what I can tell you is the number one no is no printed copies of PII anywhere, and that's what you're getting through a fax machine. Is a printed copy of the information. The hardest standard that they have is that there's no printed information that has anyone's personal information obtained in it. Hard copy file.
Yeah, I imagine anything like that would get sent through their CAD system. I think what usually gets sent from the Rock to the police, the department specifically, are, like I said, court orders that they obviously need the physical paper for it in order to serve warrants or anything like that, where it funnels through the Rock and then goes to the station. Like I said, right now our CAD system is nowhere near modern. It's probably just as ineffective or inefficient as our current financial management system, where there's not much you can do, quote unquote, electronically. So I think they resort to that for a lot of the stuff that they can't utilize in, they can't utilize in what we have IMC. But again, when we have a new CAD system, a lot of that's probably going to be electronic.
Interesting. So I've got just a couple of questions if no one else has anything.
Sure.
So I'm curious. We're looking at a budget of $40,000, of which we have a shortfall based on this request of $8,372. You've asked for and got approved 42,000 for next fiscal year, which if this is going to be the run rate, you're already going to be short and asking for a line item transfer in about 300 days. So how are we going to avoid that? Is there just certain things we're going to not be doing in order to not go over the 42,000 next year? Or is that just, we're just going to ask for more money at the end of the year?
It's a fair question. Like Cody had mentioned, we're going to be going through and auditing which lines we have, and that might be removing it to decrease the overall bill that affects it. The other options, yeah, we might have to cut certain things out of the budget for the time being. But I can tell you that it is not our anticipation to come back and ask for more. I think we are. I think 42,000 appropriation is sufficient for what we need to do, and we're going to fit within that limit, one way or another.
Looking at it as sitting today, you're going to need to find $6,372.60 in savings over the next 12 months.
Well, keep in mind that I'm also going through our Verizon, so our Verizon bill is basically going to be zero, and that's a large chunk of what that 8,000 is. That's about $450 a month plus.
Okay. What's your average communications bill a month?
Between the various vendors, we are looking at about $2,100 for our primary phone system through 8x8. For our AT&T wireless, we're looking at about $900.
Okay.
For our Verizon, it's about $450, but again, that's going to be zeroed to whatever extent that is once we finish the transfer.
But to Cody's point, it's not going to be zero because that money's going back to general fund, correct? So
I'm saying the monthly cost. So right now is $450 once I complete the transfer.
Yeah, so the Verizon will be zero. So basically, Caesar has been transitioning us out of Verizon. It's taken a little bit longer than we anticipated, but once the idea is over the next month, we will be able to pretty much close down that Verizon account completely, and that bill will be gone. And so that's about $5,000 a year right there that, will not be there for this coming fiscal year. And then I think through reviewing our current phone lines, we could probably save another couple thousand.
Okay.
Good question, Jim, though. And like I said, it's not something that obviously neither myself or Cody want to be coming back. Obviously, we want to keep it in the budget, and we're going to do what we have to get it there, whether it be cutting certain lines and finding an alternative, or like I said, trying to find other funding sources, or putting certain purchases through the appropriate funding sources once we analyze all that information.
All right. Anybody have any other questions? Can I get a motion to approve the line item transfer of $9,500 from building inspector wages to the communications telephone lines?
So moved.
Thank you,
Second.
Frank. Thank you, Cheryl. Roll call vote. EJ?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes, on 9,500 for phones and communications.
Cheryl?
Yes.
Thank you, Cheryl. And I'm a yes also, so it passes all in favor.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Yes, thanks for explaining all that, Caesar.
Thank you guys for listening.
All right, so that has been approved. So the next line item transfer is electricity for the police department.
Yes, it is. So you had previously done a transfer. We felt very confident that that was going to cover it. You may recall I had mentioned that we procured a new energy rate. That rate went into effect a month later than I anticipated it. So I thought it was going to take effect that first month. So I think it was May. And it didn't take effect until June. So, and then just the electricity usage was a lot higher than the average bill. So we looked at the average bill and then added 10% when we did the transfer previously, and it was a lot higher than that. So hence the need for the additional $200.
Okay. It seems fairly self-explanatory to me. Does anybody else have any questions? And we're getting cheaper electric bills, right, Dale? Yes?
Our rate is cheaper. Our bills are higher because usage is up right now, but because of air conditioning, but
Compared
yeah, the
year over
rate.
year? Do we have a year-over-year comparison like this July, last July?
Yeah, I don't have it with me right now, but we do have it. And our what we're seeing is a higher usage and higher cost, because last year at this time we were still under our old contract,
Right.
which we were paying at 10.4 cents per kilowatt hour. That went up to 15.6 for a few months, and then we got it back down to, we have two rates. One of them is 11.2, and then I think the other one is 12.5 around there. So either way, we're saving now with cheaper rates for the next 26 months.
But demand's up with the early heat wave.
Yep.
Yeah.
Don't air condition the prison blocks.
They're in the basement, aren't they? Should be
I have
cool
no
enough.
idea. Okay. Anybody have any other questions? Can I get a motion to approve the line item transfer of $200 from police wages to maintenance and electricity in the police station?
So moved.
Thank you, Cheryl. Second.
Second,
Thank you, Frank. Roll call, EJ.
Yes.
Frank.
yes, on $400 for the electricity at the police department.
Well, I'm sure they want it doubled, but I think it's $200.
Oh, 200, my bad, I'm sorry.
Cheryl.
Yes.
Thank you, Cheryl. I'm a yes also to move $200 from police wages to the maintenance and electricity. That is approved. I think the last one that we had that was on the agenda was moving $100 from the police wages to police expense. Over to Cody.
Yep, so they desperately tried to stay within this. You know, I think you've heard the chief mention this is a very tight budget for them. With all the expenses that they have, they tried to stay within this, but they did go over. They're transferring the $100 to play it safe, but you can see they're really negative by like $7.37. And this is just general expenses for the department. Things that they need. It could range from office supplies to, you know, outfitting officers for, you know, things that they need within the department. And so, yeah, just they went over a little bit.
Very good. Anybody have any questions for Cody or the chief?
Just real quick, Jim. Just to clarify, I'm assuming this is to cover the remainder of FY24, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And do we know for certain that, you know, they're in negatives, you know, $7 now? Do we know for certain that there's nothing pending in the queue that would hit once we reconcile June?
Well, all invoices were due on Thursday to our accounting office. And I had a meeting with not a meeting, but I spoke with our interim accountant today. And beyond what has been submitted, there is nothing else. All of the transfers should cover any deficiencies. So there's no other accounts that we anticipate, unless something comes through from, you know, we make it known, it's on our departments. They know what they're ordering. They know what their subscriptions are. You know, they need to anticipate the invoices. Everyone knew the invoices were due Thursday. We, like I said, got that one this morning. But as far as they know, and they've explained to us that this is it. Anything beyond this anyways. So we have until the 15th to do line item transfers. If an invoice were to come in tomorrow, at this point, the department would have to request to have it on a town meeting. And we would actually have to go to town meeting to pay a prior year invoice ultimately.
Yeah, I was more concerned with this line item specifically. Like I would hate for us to approve $100 at that amount and then find out there's $125 out there that's
Yeah.
still reconciled.
No, this was just for, the reason for this request was a specific invoice. I don't have the invoice in front of me, but the $100 will cover the invoice. The invoice made it negative by the 737.
Okay.
So it wasn't anything beyond that. They had the invoice in mind.
Okay, good question, EJ. Thank you.
Sounds good.
Any other questions?
Mm,
All right. Can I get a motion to approve the line item transfer of $100 from the from wages to the police expense?
So moved.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Second,
Thank you, Frank. Roll call vote, EJ.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Frank.
yes, on the $100 regarding the office supplies.
Thank you, Frank. Cheryl.
Yes.
Thank you, Cheryl. I'm a yes also, so that motion carries. Since we voted on the 4 that I have in my one block, I'm going to send that out right now. So everybody should have it, as I said, within the next probably 10 to 15 minutes. All right, so that takes care of those line items. We had one other add to the agenda for line item transfers that were not that are reasonably available to be done. We had one come in today from Cody to move $2,000 from the town buildings, the snow and ice line item, to town building expense.
So this was we budget $2,000 annually for snow and ice related specifically to town buildings. So, salt, other supplies that are needed. And obviously it was a very mild winter. So the minimal items that our facilities team had to utilize, Scott just ended up using out of his general expense account. With that, I'm sure you all have heard about the issues over at the library with the bathroom facilities over there. During the course of fiscal 24, we had the plumber over there at least 4 or 5 times trying to deal with the bathrooms. We had clogging issues. We had, overflowing as a result of clogging onto the floors. So as you know, plumbers, those service calls aren't cheap. Some of them have to be emergency calls. So that is what really drove this account to be in the negative. There was we didn't know about it because a bill came in. We thought we were going to be good. And then there was a maintenance bill for the generators. A few of the generators we have in town, they have annual maintenance done. And that bill came in and was going to put us over the budget. So that's why the request just came in. The director was on vacation, so I didn't know about it until today.
All right.
What are
Nice.
we doing about the issues associated with the library? Are we going to continue in the fashion that it's at, or?
Yeah, it's a good question, Frank. We shut down the bathrooms to the public about 4 months ago, and we placed a porta potty over there. And the idea of that really was to figure out, do we have a plumbing issue or do we have a people issue, is what we wanted to figure out. And what we found is the bathrooms have been utilized by the staff for the past 4 months, and we have not had a single issue. That tells me we have a people issue. We don't have a plumbing issue. Every time the plumber went out, he found toys down the pipes. He found diapers down the pipes. So, we could certainly spend and invest on, for instance, lining the pipes, right, to make it so things go down a little bit easier. But you still may have the issue if people are throwing dirty diapers down the toilets. There's a very good chance that they're going to continue to clog. So we've had internal discussions with the library director, Jean Gallant, myself, and Scott. We're trying to figure out what the best option to move forward is. We recognize we need to provide, bathroom facilities to our library patrons. Hence why we got the porta potty out there, right away. But also, as a steward of town finances, it's very difficult for me to recommend to you or a capital planning committee or town meeting to go out and spend, you know, what could be hundreds or hundreds of thousands of dollars to redo piping when the reality is we're probably going to have the same issue if we open it up and people continue to throw things down there that shouldn't be. So that's kind of the challenge that we're working through and figuring out a balance of providing facilities, but also being conscious of the town's finances. You know, we have a lot of requests and there's a need for several capital items. So it's trying to balance that. So the long of it is we don't really have an answer right now.
No, and I understand that. I'm just looking along the lines of maybe some educational information available inside the library, set up some containers for the diapers and those types of
Yeah.
things, you know.
We did do that. Gene bought diaper genies, put them in the bathrooms, put up signage. Scott has put up signage, you know, don't flush anything down the toilets. We've gone through all of that as much as we can. You know, we've talked about doing you know, a system where you have to maybe ask for the key to the bathroom. But again, it's not going to mitigate people throwing things down there is what, you know, the unfortunate fact is.
Right, I understand that. And then there's the issue that you see out there of some of the elderly people having issues with the outside facilities, you know, especially in the heat here. And then winter's going to be coming after that. So I don't know. It's, I guess, a double-edged sword.
Yeah, it would be easier if we were able to say, hey, you know, there's this problem with the pipes, you know, plumbers come in, identified it, and it would be unfortunate if we had to spend the money to do it, but at least we could say, okay, this is the problem. We need to do this, and we could, you know, request the money from town meeting and move forward with it. But like I said, it's just, there is a very good chance that even if we were to line the pipe, for instance, which we got a proposal of, you know, $20,000 to $30,000, it's going to continue to happen because just like, you know, all of your homes, if you throw diapers down the toilet and toys and stuff, it's going to clog the pipes.
Right. No, I understand. Yeah. Because the town's on, you know, the library's on a septic system, just like your residence is.
Right.
So
Exactly.
you can only accept certain items down the line.
Mhm.
And those items you mentioned aren't acceptable down the line. So, you know, you would think that people would, kind of understand that, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? Okay, so can I get a motion to approve the $2,000 line item transfer from the snow and ice account to the town building expense account? Or I think it's the same account, it's just different lines.
Yeah, so they're all under the municipal school building committee.
Right.
And then, yeah, it's the snow and ice under that to the expense account, general expense account.
So move, Jim.
Thank
Second,
you, EJ, second by Cheryl. Thank you, Cheryl. Roll call vote. EJ,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes, on the $2,000 for the MSBC.
Cheryl,
yes,
and I am a yes also, so that motion will carry as approved. So I will sign the one that you sent out, Cody.
Perfect. Yes, excellent. Thank you.
All right.
Jim, are you sending that one around to all of us as well? Or is it just
No,
yours?
no. That's one. Cody sent that as a separate email. So that's a single that Cody, you should have an Adobe request
I do.
from
So
Cody.
just in approving the one Cody sent out.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. So I added a item to the agenda to kind of chat about this, and Cody, you can kind of help me through this because this was new to me. When I stopped by the finance committee mailbox at town hall, there was a pile of papers, and amongst those papers were signature authorization forms. for this fiscal year. So I have to, or I am, there's one that I'm going to probably take back to town hall, and Cody, that's going to be the big one with name, signature, and title, because I think you need wet signatures for that, it seems, right?
Yes, please.
The second document is, and Cheryl, if you're okay with this, I was going to appoint you as being authorized to sign the payroll in case I am unavailable to do that when I either disabled or in my absence.
That's fine, Jim.
Okay.
Not a
So
problem.
Cheryl, that'll be there for you. Have to sign that one also. So
Okay.
that'll be there for you. And then this other one, as I said, it's a long one. I'll leave it with the Lindsay in the accounting office so that she can fill it out. But it's I'll scan a copy and send it out to everybody so you have a copy of what it is that we're signing ahead of time. But I will be dropping it off tomorrow, probably tomorrow morning.
Okay.
All right.
Mm.
So when you see it, if you have any questions, I'm sure Cody can answer them. To me, it just looks like we're just, listing out who's on the committee for this year. And then for Cheryl, for you to be the alternate signer for payroll and other things that need to be signed.
Yeah, that's pretty much, yep, you hit the nail on the head, Jim. You guys really don't have any bills, vendor bills that come in. So the only thing you would have is payroll, and you would
Right.
just agree that, Jim would be the primary signer and then Cheryl will be the backup, and that's it.
Perfect. Well, that makes sense. So thank you for that help, Cody. And again, if you guys have questions, I'm sure Cody could probably answer them if he's available to chat about it. All right, so that closes out that specific agenda item and on to the budget report. So I know, Cody, I know I sent you an email just about some of the questions that I had regarding some unexpended balances. I think Frank, you sent one in with some other line items that you had some questions over. So my question, just for everybody's edification, was there were a lot of lines that had unexpended funds associated with them, and I'm sure, I'm fairly sure that a lot of that will be depleted as invoices are reconciled at the end of the year, which is, today. But there still kind of leaves a lot of money out there. There's a lot of line items that have, all town meeting warrant numbers next to them, the ATM number, whatever. I don't know if that's just going to permanently be there because it was part of the warrant, or does that roll into free cash because nobody's done anything with it? Just kind of what are the mechanics behind it? Just because I'm not familiar with it, and I'm sure that, the information would benefit probably everybody, I would hope.
Yeah, so great question. What you see for the most part, if it has like the date next to it, that means it was an article on town meeting on that date. And those are primarily articles. So the town has done things a little bit uniquely in the past. You have two sources of funds, right? You have your operating budget, your town meeting approves it, annually through Article 4. And then you have your capital plan, which are those capital items. And that would be it. What the town has done in the past is for things that probably should have been rolled into an operational budget, if they were looking for even a couple $1,000s, would go forward with an article. And so you do see there are some in there, for a few $1,000s for whatever. So you have, Frank sent one, electric, solar, traffic signs, Springtown meeting, $2,412. Now it was approved for a higher amount, but there's a lot of those in there. So they're articles. With an article, it doesn't, close out automatically at the end of the year. So like our operating budget, any excess funds will close out automatically at the end of the fiscal year. When we do our reporting to the Department of Revenue, we take the excess funds along with our excess revenue, and that ends up being our free cash that we would utilize towards capital for the next fiscal year. with the articles, we would need to manually close those out. So believe it or not, there used to be a lot more of these with kind of some small balances, but at the end of fiscal 23 and early fiscal 24, Sandy did a nice job of going through, following up with a lot of departments. Hey, do you still need this? What's the status of this? And closed a lot of those out. I anticipate we'll do the same with Eric, our interim accountant, over the next month or so, and just make sure, what's the status of these, and close those out when they're not needed. And then the other thing is making sure we're staying on our department heads, that when we approve a capital item, that they follow through and order it. We don't want to wait 3 or 4 years. And then what ends up happening is we usually get priced out of it and we need additional money. So we want to make sure they follow through with those. So that's why you see a lot of those in there. And that stays reserved until we close it out. So like that won't show, that won't be available as free cash because it's a reserved it's reserved money already for that specific purpose. So most of it already was free cash at one point, and then it was appropriated for whatever the purpose, and then it stays that way until we close it out.
And when we close it, it goes general?
Yeah, it just reverts back to general revenue, and then would end up closing out to free cash when we certify free cash.
Right. Jimmy, you done, or you got any?
Well, I guess I probably just have 2 just quick follow-up questions. As I read through it, something like the highway has something from 2019
Right.
for a fence.
Exactly.
Right? What? And it's still there. The monies are it's a carry forward line.
Yep.
So there's no real appropriation. It's like money that's just already there. Why hasn't that project been done? So, and my second follow-up question is my favorite project, which is the American with Disabilities Act and the $500,000 that has been reserved for that. Can the town get a plan from whoever's, hanging on to $500,000 to say,
Yep.
Here's what I'm going to do this year and here's how we're going to spend it? Because it just seems to me just bad financial management on the part of the department heads for not, taking the money, getting the stuff done, because, I understand it's the town's money and, it's just been allocated that way, but still from a fiduciary aspect, it just seems kind of foolish that we are this far behind on stuff.
Yeah, so let me start with the highway one. So Frank brought up a good point, a lot of those accounts. And I met with Steve about these, and I also sent him an email asking for him to provide some written documentation as to, what has happened here. It's the fence in particular, I agree, was a concern, and I brought it up to him. The reason for that, the town had planned to fence in that area over where the landfill is. So the town's landfill over Hemlock Lane where the highway barn is. And then there was a solar committee, I think is what it was. They started bringing up the idea of leasing the land for solar. And so when Steve heard that, he put a pause in this project because most likely whoever put the solar on the project on the landfill would be responsible for fencing it. So he didn't want to use the town funds if it were going to be completed through a private vendor. So the status of that is we did go out to bid maybe 6 or 9 months ago. For that, we did have a vendor respond, and we're negotiating with a vendor right now to lease that land out. So and part of that is they would be required to put up a fence. Once that happens, if that does happen, and we have a contract with them, we can close out this article and return that money to the town. We just have not done it yet because we don't have anything executed, and we don't want to, close out the funds if for some reason it falls through and we need to end up putting the fence ourselves, the town pay for it ourselves. So that's the reason for that. But I have asked Steve to provide documentation on the other items as well. The truck, the dump truck, I've talked to him several times about this. He has ordered that now. that is expected to come sometime this fall or early winter. So that item should be utilized too. But as soon as I get the rest of the information, I will share with the finance committee.
Yeah, Cody, and I wanted to touch base on that. I see that it did have a expenditure to date of $215,867 from the truck at town meeting in 2022. But right above that, there's another highway dump truck from 5/10/21 town meeting, Article 34 for $71,000 that was never dealt with as well.
Yeah, that's the one that he ordered, Frank. So that's the one that is now ordered. It will be coming sometime this fall, early winter. We can certainly have Steve in to kind of explain the logic. Basically, when I asked him about this and why it hadn't been done, he said it aligned with when there were a lot of shipping delays and vehicles were delayed. And he anticipated that those delays would come down. As we all know, they really didn't. So he didn't order and thought it would be best to wait. And then, unfortunately, he now has ordered it. It's actually going to cost us like $20,000 more. So that's going to. Yeah. So, we tried
So where
to
are we going to get? So where's 20,000 coming from?
We're going to use our Chapter 90 funding. So we're getting some additional Chapter 90 funding this year as part of that fair share amendment. So the millionaires tax that the state put into account, a lot of that. So we're getting an additional, I think, $150,000 or $160,000 in Chapter 90 money. So that can be utilized for that portion.
Typically, don't we use the Chapter 90 for the roads?
What's that, Frank?
Typically, don't we use Chapter 90 money for the roads?
It can be. We've used it for several different things. We're using a small portion of it for the highway barn roof replacement. Steve was looking to do a new salt shed. That's something it may be used for. We've used it for the Pine Street Bridge to supplement the grant that we got for that. As long as it goes toward the operation, which this truck, directly would, it's a valid expense that we can utilize that funding for.
Yeah, okay. And then, of course, another item I had there, as you saw, was an additional backhoe from 2021 as well, a highway backhoe, Article 33 for $21,800. We just got rid of a backhoe that we gave to transferred over to the water department. We bought a new excavator in FY24 for $150,000. So we anticipate buying this backhoe that we had requested money for in 2021.
Again, that's one of those items I'm still waiting clarification on from our highway surveyor. As soon as I have that, I'll share that with you.
Yeah, and my concern is that these are articles that are several years old, most of these, and nothing had been done with them. And, that's a lot of money setting that in tight times, that if we haven't done something with it by now, did we really need it to begin with?
Right.
That's fair.
Yeah. So,
and we're asking the schools to cut dollars.
Right.
Yeah.
So I agree. And it is an operational thing, right? We need to make sure that we're requesting or our departments are in a situation where they are requesting only what is needed and they're able to identify those needs. But then it's a follow through where we need to make sure our departments are following through. The expectation is if they put in a request, we would expect them to spend it. I mean, you see most departments, if they have a capital request, come July 1st, they can't get that money quick enough. But for some departments, that hasn't been the case, and that's an operational thing we need to work on.
Okay.
So why is it even allowed that if something's approved in FY21 that it's not being for FY23 or 24 or 25?
Yeah.
Well, once it's appropriated, it's there for use for whatever the use is. It doesn't, we don't give a time limit. And the reason for that is, so for vehicles, for instance, you probably could, make it so it needed to be spent that fiscal year. COVID was a little different because there were certain vehicles where you were waiting over a year. But generally speaking, nowadays you can get it within a year. But there could be other projects that are multi-year. So we're looking at, the Council on Aging project where the 1.7 million approximately was appropriated. That's going to be a multi-year, and you may even have several years after the fact, right, that you're using that to kind of tighten things up at the end. So projects, most of the time, capital projects span multiple years.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
from a
yeah,
project
right.
standpoint, I get it from a project standpoint, but if you're talking about an actual good or an item that's being purchased, if you're not buying it within that fiscal year, inflation right out of the gate is going to throw it out of the budget that they've been approved for.
Hmm.
Yeah. So,
So there's no standard in place that tells them if we approve it for FY21, you have to purchase an FY21.
So, um, I completely agree with everything you're saying. And for departments that are under the Board of Selectmen's and, therefore under kind of my jurisdiction, that is something we can easily, we have more oversight, I should say, with. We have an elected highway surveyor. He, that position is kind of,
he just can work with impunity.
no, and he does a nice job of working, collaboratively. But there isn't a direct kind of way of it's not like other departments, right, where it's a direct report where we can oversee that process.
Oh, we're
So
giving-
Why not? I
reporting
mean,
them
the money's it's
Yeah,
the
why
town's
not?
money.
I mean, so if town meeting wanted to put a stipulation in or something where it had to be spent in a certain year, but once we approve it and it gets the authorization to spend is under the highway surveyor, that's an elected position that
Mhm.
the only one that's accountable to is the voters of Halifax.
And we don't think that the voters of Halifax care about that sitting there all that time and not
They
being
don't know.
used.
They don't know. That's the
Yeah.
problem.
I think I think that with Cody or with all, I understand what you're saying, but I don't think the fact that that position is elected should have any bearing whatsoever on whether or not the person is held accountable to spend their money within a fiscal year that it's allocated for.
Exactly.
I mean,
Well, I see what you're saying, EJ, but there's no that position doesn't report to anyone. That position reports to the voters of Halifax. So,
But why-
there's
stipulate that the funds, when we award the funds, why aren't we stipulating that the funds are yours for FY21? If they're not spent in FY21, then the town takes them back.
because it's to be honest, this isn't an issue across the board, and this isn't an issue in most communities. You need to give the, we have qualified staff and we trust them to carry these things out. So, and there may be something where, we just had, I don't know if it was a police vehicle or a fire vehicle, I can't recall, but we got the vehicle in one fiscal year, but then it couldn't get outfitted for another month or so. So it technically got outfitted in the next fiscal year. And in that case, now you're talking, if we were to stipulate it had to be spent in a fiscal year, now the vehicle wouldn't be able to be outfitted. We'd have to potentially go back to town meeting and delay it for a few more months. So it's not a typical and that's why I say it's more of an operational problem, because this isn't a normal or not a typical issue to have of spending the money. Like I said, you're not seeing this across the board. What you're seeing is a lot of these accounts where there's money left is just a cleanup. We haven't gone through and cleaned them up and closed them out. Most of them have been spent. In the cases where they haven't touched them at all, it's an operational point. We need to revisit it and say, yeah, did you really need this? Because if it was approved 4 years ago, that's a tough sell to the town and to the finance committee, right? You really needed this, but it's been 4 or 5 years. Why hasn't it been spent? I mean, but there's no, the way a capital item or an article is approved is it's appropriated once and it's there for use until until either rescinded by town meeting or closed out, you know, through the town accountant, through the town.
Yeah, I stand by what I've said. I think it's fiscally irresponsible to allow just an open-ended purchase on something that's been approved. I get it for projects, but there's no way that you can assume that something is even going to be remotely close to the monetary value that it has today to what it's going to be 4 years from now. And the citizens of the town, based on what they've been told when the article was approved, is that this is what it's going to cost to happen. When 4 years later, then the town is going to be told it's going to cost, hey, by the way, it's going to cost another $30,000 because we didn't do it 4 years ago when you first approved it. And I don't think that's fair to the taxpayers of the town.
I agree. I'm completely on board with you here. I mean, if you have recommendations on how to handle it, I'm all ears. It's, you know, it's not that I disagree with you.
Doesn't the Board of Selectmen have the authority to create policy over financial pieces of the town's business?
They do, but not for, so the way that this works is when a capital item is approved, there's spending authorization that is given. So if you look at this article, so take the article from 2021, I think it was, for the dump truck. If we pull up that article, it says, and I'm paraphrasing, something along the lines of X amount of dollars to be spent by the highway surveyor for the purpose of buying a dump truck. The only person that has the authorization at that point to use that money or move forward with something is the highway surveyor.
No, I understand that. And I also I understand we kind of are where we are and we can't turn the clock back. I get that. Moving forward, when Steve comes in, somebody, whoever, comes in and they want to get another chipper, right? And they want $84,000. During that capital planning session, can it not be stipulated by the Finance Committee, the Board of Selectmen, or whoever, that if this article is approved by the town, you have the fiscal year to buy it, or 12 months to buy it, or whatever. And if it's not bought in that time, that money falls back into the general fund.
I would have to check to make sure that we have if town meeting were to vote it that way, Jim, absolutely, no doubt in my mind.
Right.
As far as the authorization to rescind, kind of take that money back, I'd have to check and see how we would handle that.
Let's ask the town attorney. I don't see any harm in that. You know,
because it's part of the capital planning process for that fiscal year, right?
Yeah, and so the way we do it now, we would not have an issue with it, right? Because we say to be spent by the highway department and whatever it is. So if it were an item that we did this year or last year, no doubt we would not have an issue if the Board of Selectmen took a vote, hey, we're going to close this out. I have no question that we could do that. It's these prior items that were done prior to 23. So in 22, 21, anything prior to that, the language in the articles were very specific as to who has the authority for each article. And those are the ones where I'll check with council and see what the process would be on that, because they're specifically to, for instance, the highway surveyor. The way we do it now is all under one capital plan, so it's not a separate article, and it's just general oversight by the Board of Selectmen. So that's something we could rescind any of those. But we're talking about ones that are all previous to that.
So what is our policy, I guess, relative to the capital planning process for a department head if they have an item that they know they're going to want to procure in an upcoming fiscal year? So take a dump truck or a chipper, for example. If they know they're going to want to do that, what do they go out and get quotes? But I guess where are they coming up with the amount that they're requesting?
Yep. So we prior to this past fiscal year, the process wasn't well defined. They kind of just submitted what they submitted. Capital Planning Committee may meet, may not meet, and then go from there. What we've started is we have a defined capital form, which you may have seen. It's a project request form they have to fill out. We have one for equipment and then one for projects. And then they have to attach supporting documentation. So either they need to follow procurement law. So they would either need to get a proposal that's from a state contract and attach it. They would need to, if it's not a state contract, they would need to solicit multiple proposals. So we have an idea of what we're looking at. So they have to go through some sort of procurement process and attach it with that project request form. So we know that it's a valid request.
Okay, so in theory, once the budget is approved for the upcoming fiscal year, they would have everything in hand that they need to go out and make that procurement right away.
As of fiscal 24, yes, that has been the process. So anything now that is, since I've been here, that has been the process, that they are armed to make those purchases as of July 1st.
Okay, so this issue should essentially go away outside of potentially projects that you mentioned. But for goods and items that we would actually receive physically, this issue should probably go away based on the new process that's in place.
That's the goal. I mean, yeah, that's the goal. Anything like this that we see, even before it gets to like the finance committee. So, and I'll be blunt with you. I had a conversation with Steve probably going back 6 or 8 months, about this, because it's something that got brought up during our existing capital planning process for fiscal 25, when I reviewed, what we had previously allocated. It jumps right out at you, right? We previously approved a truck and we haven't bought it. That's raises eyebrows, right? Why have we done this? So that he has ordered it now. Can't go back in time, but he has ordered it.
Yeah, right. And we're talking, not including the $220,000 truck, about $111,267 going back as far as 2019 that hadn't been expended. It kind of looks like, well, did we really need it anyhow? Because we didn't do anything with it. Is how I look at it. Now the cost of all those items on there are going to cost us another 30, 40, 50% more than what's tagged there. So at that point, how do we deal with that when somebody comes in and they've got an item for $120,000 and now they need another $40,000 to purchase it on an article? Who approves that $40,000?
Well, it depends what the funding source is, Frank. So, if it's a funding source that needs appropriation, it would have to go through the process of, capital planning, and then it would come to you guys as finance committee, and then it would have to go to town meeting. For something like Chapter 90, Steve has the ability to spend Chapter 90 within his department as he sees fit. So it all depends on the funding source. But yeah, I'm in complete agreement with you guys. I really view it as more of an operational management issue than anything, which I think we're tightening up and will continue to tighten up. And unfortunately, we just can't change kind of how it was done previously. But we recognize that it's an issue and we're trying to fix it.
Yeah, but a concern of mine is we're taking money from somewhere else to pay out more money for something that we should have already had when we could be using that money for something else, as tight as things are getting. And now we're taking Chapter 90 money, which historically has been used for our roads. And there's plenty of roads in Halifax that need Chapter 90 money. So just a little concerned about using that money for purchasing other items. And then I guess we don't have somebody within town doesn't have a say over there except for the manager of the division that it's being utilized in.
It's kind of strange.
So.
I think it's unusual that Steve it doesn't really report to anybody. So I'd like to ask the town attorney about that too. And I'll do my own kind of digging. There's got to be, he just can't, just be like, well, everybody's got to vote me out, whether I'm doing a good job or a bad job.
That is the case, Jim. And that's why you're seeing towns move away. And I don't mean this in any reflection of Steve or anyone in the position. But that's why you're seeing towns move away from this model, because there's no oversight. They report to the voters basically the only way that they are removed out of their position is if there were a recall and they voted them out, or if they go up for reelection and they don't win reelection. Hypothetically, and it's happened in some towns, they could not show up. They don't get vacation or sick time. What we pay them is just an annual salary ultimately. But they're not a position where they get 2 weeks sick time or 3 weeks vacation time. They could take 2 months off of work. They report to the voters, and that's why there were someone put an article on town meeting a couple of years ago for this kind of for that. Or you may have a treasurer collector, which that is a huge professional role. All of these elected roles are, but you're responsible for the town's money. If the job doesn't get done, obviously as the town administrator, I'll step in and help where I can. But you could have a treasurer collector who could tell me to pound dirt. Sorry, nope, you're not involved with this. I'm elected. This is my operation. Leave me alone. Luckily, we don't. We have all three of our full-time elected positions are very collaborative, and it works. But they could. It's Tell me about it. You're preaching to the choir. I think it is. It's not a very good way to run because there's no accountability. But the way town meeting kind of views it as it's the ultimate accountability, that they're the ones that vote these people in. But it's just changed so much over the years. It's not, the town clerk is a great example. The town clerk, 20, 30 years ago, did birth certificates, marriages, and elections were a lot simpler. The town clerk nowadays, there's so many regulations and legal aspects of it. I mean, Frank works in the polls, and I'm sure he sees just a small portion of what goes on. And you could have anyone who could win an election could serve in that role, and it's a mess. So it could be a mess. It's not a mess in Halifax, but it could be if you get the wrong person in there. Right. It's one of the reasons the Board of Selectmen are looking at doing a form of government study, because they recognize that kind of the way that we're going is not a trajectory for success.
Not the future.
It is.
Sure isn't.
Yeah, it's not. So, but yeah, if you do you can do a little bit of research on it. A lot of times they're changing, but they're responsible to the voters. No oversight other than the voters.
That's a shame.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever lived anywhere when it was like that, like anywhere.
Yeah, me either.
Well, just as long as we can come to terms on all these article items that are not being utilized, and either get it done for what they are for, or let's get that money moved out of there and put back into the general. And if we really need it, let's bring it back to the town and vote for it on a new article.
Cody, why don't we invite Steve to the next meeting, and he can certainly tell us in his own words
Absolutely.
why these projects are dragging. So
Definitely. And then the other one, Jim, was the ADA stuff.
yeah.
So it looks like Scott has spent about 77,000.
Yep.
He has another 40,000 encumbered, meaning he has a contract in place. We just haven't paid it out. And the reason the remainder is there is because we're actually bidding out right now a paving project. So for ramps, accessibility over, let's see, it's the library, it's the Council on Aging, and it's the elementary school. Mm-hmm. And that is expected to take up almost the remainder of that, probably around 300 to 350,000.
Wow.
That's a lot.
It is.
Yeah, it's a lot of
asphalt
asphalt going down.
Yeah. Huh. So if the paving absorbs the balance of what's left, how is he going to fulfill all the other items in that 192-page report?
I anticipate he will be coming back to request additional funding. I have advised him that is something that needs to be on his 5-year capital plan. How he envisions that being spent, so we can plan for it. Mm-hmm. But I would tend to believe that he'll be requesting additional funding as early as next fiscal year.
Okay. Can we ask him to submit like some kind of plan timeline?
Yeah, so he's working on. I've asked him to prepare a report of projects that have been completed And then also how he anticipates, just the next few years going and just rough estimates. It's challenging, right? You go out anything beyond the current year,
Sure.
but provide some rough estimates of each project, particularly the larger ones, and how much it's going to cost. So
Just looking for a rough order of magnitude. That's really what I'm looking for, especially from cost and time.
Yep. He's working on that. Once he has it completed, I'll share it with the committee.
You know what kind of numbers he's looking for, Cody?
Think he's going to be looking for as much as he can get. It's really all going to depend on, how our free cash is, and our other expenses. He initially was only looking for 200,000 or 300,000, last fiscal year, but free cash was in a pretty good place, and we knew that there was just going to be more. So we had said, let's bump it up to 5. So
Right.
if he can get another 5, he'll probably ask for another 5. I don't know if we'll be in a position to give him another 5 though.
Okay. Any other questions on the budget for this?
Thanks, Cody, for going through those numbers over the weekend and getting back and just kind of explaining all that tonight to everybody. And I have a better understanding, and to a degree, I have a better understanding. But just the concern is how old the article items are and not being managed properly.
Something I think we all need to keep a track of, because as EJ said, year over year, these costs are going to go up. And so what they've been awarded at this point may not be enough to complete the activity. And then they're going to come back and say, I need to do this. I've got a fence I want to put up from 2019, and, I thought it was going to be 40, but now it's 80.
Yeah, no, I agree. The goal when we do it, when we have a proposal submitted with a capital item, I typically will add 10 or tell the department head to add 10% to that figure, just because you're talking about they're getting a figure sometimes in December, January, and the earliest they're going to be able to start to actually buy that or start the project is July. So in that time, you may see a 5 or 10% increase anyway. So we always tell them to add 10%. And then best case scenario, the price remains consistent and we return that back to the town. But we don't build in enough to cover multiple years of inflation. That's just
right, exactly.
It wouldn't be financially smart or feasible.
And it makes sense to put a 10 or 15% contingency in there into your numbers anyhow,
Right.
due to unforeseen circumstances within the project itself, and or, like you say, cost of materials and labor.
Yep.
That's just smart business.
Right.
Yep. One thing too, I mentioned this to Jim in my email, with our new financial system, I'm hopeful that we're able to separate these as capital projects or articles and then operational budgets, because it is rather confusing now when you look at it and it's all kind of one document. It would be, I think, very helpful to be able to sort those two. Hey, here's your operating budget. Here's your capital items. So hopefully that'll make things easier come December.
Cody, do you have any information on the new financial management system that you could potentially share with us, like any written material? I'm just curious as to what the system is like that you're installing, just out of curiosity.
Yeah, I can see if I can find something. Most of the information we have, we did like a series of demos, several hours of demos. That's kind of where we saw a lot of it, but we certainly should have some information. And if I'll look and see what I can find and send it out. It's called Springbrook is the name of it.
Cirrus.
Yes. Oh, Cirrus.
CIRRUS.
Yeah, Cirrus through Springbrook. But I'll find some documentation and share it with you guys.
Is it Cirrus with a C?
Yes.
Okay.
With a C?
Yeah.
Okay, I just look it up. Oh, okay.
Springbrook software.
Keep going.
Anything else for Cody? Or the budget on this round? All right, we'll close that agenda item out. And again, just to echo Frank, thanks for all the information, Cody. Certainly do appreciate
Yeah,
it.
no problem.
Yeah, thank you very much. Like I say, I sent it to you kind of late and I apologize for that.
Oh, no worries.
I didn't want to blindside you Monday afternoon with it or Monday evening on the meeting.
No, I appreciate it.
Yeah, Cody, that was a helpful conversation for sure.
Good, yeah. I don't mean to jump the gun. When is the next meeting? So I can.
Well, that's we're going to talk about that as our last item. So I am out the next 2 Mondays. So next Monday and the following Monday. So Ruth and I are away on vacation. So I would say what's the first weekend?
So
First Monday in
somewhere
August.
around
Would be the 5th.
the 5th.
So, we
So
can do-
one item I wanted to note was we had talked about a meeting with the school department. I did get in touch with them and they've said that they could be available on the 12th.
August 12th.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
That works.
Yeah.
So are you saying we should hold the meeting on the 12th and not the 5th, Cody? Is that the recommendation that I'm hearing?
It's totally up to you guys. We definitely should hold one on the 12th if everyone's available, because I think it's important to start that conversation with the schools.
Absolutely.
As far as the 5th, I mean, I can't think of anything that would really come up that would be urgent. This is kind of things slow down for about a month because,
Right.
all line item transfers are in. And then mid-August, we'll really start talking budget again. I'd like to, Todd had mentioned it, but I'd like to start reviewing our financial policies, maybe sometime in August. That'd be a good time to do it.
Okay.
And get those updated prior to the start of the fiscal 26 budget season. So if everyone's comfortable waiting till the 12th, I don't think that's unreasonable at this time of year.
No, I'm good with
Good
that.
idea.
Work for everybody? EJ,
Yeah.
does it look good for you?
It does, yeah. The only thing that I'm thinking, Jim, is where we're meeting with school on the 12th.
Mhm.
Us as a group not having time to kind of jump into at least some initial conversation before we meet with them as a group. I don't know if that's beneficial or not, but it's just a thought to maybe potentially wanting to meet on the 5th for that reason.
Sure, certainly.
Or start our meeting early on the 12th, maybe half an hour early, so we can kind of regroup together and have them come in.
Yeah.
I
I think that's probably it. So we could start at 5:30
On the 12th.
on the 12th, and then the rest of the crew can jump in at 6.
yeah, and it's
Yeah.
doing if they want, but at least so
Yeah.
we can dissect it a bit.
Does that work for you, Cody? Because obviously you're germane to that conversation specifically.
Yes, absolutely. That does work. That works great. So plan for a 5:30 start and I'll ask the school to come in around 6.
Yeah.
I did, on that same topic, I had a nice meeting with the Plimpton Town Administrator today for a couple hours. And a few things we're looking to do, Sandy, I think, had mentioned Tri-Town Finance Committee meetings.
Yeah.
So it's something that I'm in the works of trying to set up. I have an email into the Kingston Town Administrator to get his thoughts on it. But we're going to try to set up a meeting among myself, the 2 town administrators from Kingston and Plimpton, the school admin team as a little kickoff. And then something we want to try is during the budget season. Jim, you were there for some of the meetings. We had, you, myself, Sandy, and the school admin team. Maybe making that once we get into the budget, a tri-town thing. So make it the town administrator, chairman of the finance committee, and even maybe, a member of the selectmen or something, but from each community to meet with the schools to try to hash out some of these things. Cause I do think there's a value in these joint meetings, but the joint meetings sometimes can be, there's a lot of people.
Right.
And the actual work that gets done, sometimes it can be minimal just cause it's a lot of conversation. So a smaller group, it's something that Plimpton Town Administrator brought up that I thought might be a good idea. So we're gonna look into that. So I just wanted to give you an update that we are working on those things.
Yeah, no, that's so I was actually that was something that I was thinking about is getting the towns to meet with the school as one body.
Yeah,
You know, and just from and that way there's like just a unification of messaging when we're talking to the school specifically, because I'm sure and I'm sure EJ probably thinks this too, is that you know, this coming year they're gonna want an increase
Yeah.
because their union contract calls for an increase. So they're just gonna want one, you know, and it doesn't, in my opinion, you know, the money's got to come from somewhere. So, you know, how is that going to happen? And I think if we start dealing with that early on, it will make it less of a contentious issue as we get closer to town meeting in May.
yeah. No, and we are going to have a very challenging fiscal 26 budget. If anyone has any interest, you know, in August, I'm more than happy to sit down and go over some financial projections with you. I don't really want to do it in a public meeting at this point because they are just projections, but you know, I'm more than happy to meet one-on-one with anyone. But you know, our projections show we with our anticipated requests, we will not be able to present a balanced budget, you know, unless we were to pursue an override.
Right.
And
No, I'd love to sit down and go over that with you, Cody, whenever you get a chance.
Yeah, when you get back from vacation, shoot me an email and we can set something up, Jim.
Sounds good. Okay, well, we have inadvertently executed on the next meeting planning, so that line item is done. So we'll close that one out, move on to correspondence, and as may arise, I haven't gotten any correspondence from the Finance Committee. And is there anything that is not on the agenda that any of the members here would like to discuss as part of this meeting? Frank,
Stop and Shop.
good one.
We've kind of kicked that can around for a few months, kind of seen that coming ahead of any publications. Cody, I don't know if you can tell us this, if you know this yourself, is one, there's property tax and on the structure and the land, and two, what's the impact on the sales tax to our budget for FY26?
So I'm not going to comment on the value because I don't have enough factual information. So I don't want to, I'm not sure. So I don't want to give you any misinformation. I'll be working with our assessor to try to determine if any effect will occur. And if there is, you know, we'll definitely keep you guys updated of that. You know, it's one of the reasons we have the overlay in place, right? That money put aside for things like this, where we don't, you know, it's unexpected, whether it's an abatement or something like this occurs. So we'll be okay for fiscal 25 because we have, you know, we put money aside for that reason. If there were to be a change, I'm not sure that there will be. As for sales tax, I don't think we'll see much of a decrease. So the only thing we would directly benefit through a sales tax from them would be their prepared meals, right? We'd get a meals tax on those. But that's a small portion of what they do because this, you know, sales tax is directly state revenue. The only local revenue we get, like I said, is that meals tax, which would only be on the prepared food that they have.
Yeah, they don't do any.
All right, and then my understanding, and the assessor would know this, is who the true owner of the property is. What I've seen and researched, it's a property management company, not actually Stop and Shop, that owns the structure and the land. So maybe be kind of nice to understand that as well.
Yeah, it's a good, those are all good questions. I mean, these things unfortunately happen sometimes.
Right.
You know, we'll work, the zoning bylaw review committee actually is a great, you know, asset in this. The timing, although we would, you know, never want to see a business close down, the timing is lines up well because, you know, it's an opportunity to look at the zoning. And if we want to provide for future development there, we have a good ability right now to kind of put in place what the town would like to see, or at least present some options. So, but you know, I've seen things of, well, you know, we'd like a market basket to go in there or something. You know, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. We're not getting another grocery store in there.
Right,
You
right.
know,
Yeah,
we're
that's common
geographically,
sense.
yeah, we're geographically in a challenging location. You know, so one grocery store didn't do so well. We're not going to get another grocery store in there, but yeah, we'll work and reach out to the owners and try to work with them and you know, help them develop it. We'll get material from them once it's available and share it through our networks and share it with the, you know, Chamber of Commerce so they can do some advertising for us, and Old Colony Planning Council. So yeah, we'll do everything we can on our side to try to get that property, you know, filled again.
Right. No, I understand.
Indoor pickleball courts. It's a thing.
Seriously?
Drugstore.
It's a thing. There's
It's a
place
thing.
over
Yes,
in
it is.
Yeah, okay, yeah, sounds good.
something $1 million right now. It's crazy.
Yeah, thank you, Cody.
Very good. Anyone else? Okay. Next, we'll close that one out. Next agenda item, public participation. Is there anyone on the line who would like to comment or have questions for the Finance Committee? Okay. Hearing none, we'll close out that specific line item. So as we discussed, next meeting planning will be 5:30 on the 12th of August, where we will get together and talk about the school budget, then talk to the schools during the meeting at 6 o'clock.
If anyone has specific questions or items that you'd like to see prepared for that meeting, let me know, you know, as in much advance as possible, and I will share that with the school team so we can hopefully, you know, have a productive conversation and make sure that they are prepared for what the Finance Committee is looking for.
So I would ask that if they are doing, I guess, the things they need to do correctly, they would, by the end of July, they should have at least 1 month of expenses into their budget. And how does that look? I'm not asking for an entire year to extrapolate what they're going to, you know, burn out through the entire year, but what have they spent? Does it look like something's off balance, or is it going to be okay? Now, as we were discussing earlier, you know, the $39 million contract, or the budget that they have, not contract, my apologies, is about $220,000 a day during the school year for the 180 days of the school year. So, you know, once we get into August or after Labor Day, that's, you know, that spend is going to go up dramatically. So, you know, how do we look for the summer months, which it should be very low? And are they tracking that currently, or are they just kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop? I don't know. You know, that's a question I'd like to ask. And if they aren't, that's fine. But why aren't they? Due to the current budgets and costs of today.
Yes, and I'd like to also understand the busing contract. I believe in one of the previous meetings, they had mentioned that they were in the last year of the contract. So FY26 I believe would have been a new busing contract going out, and see where we stand with that. And also what are they doing regarding special transportation as well? What's their goals and plans with that, and how are they managing that?
I did get good news that well, it was a back and forth. On a Friday, I was given a phone call and I was told that we were going to have a deficit in our elementary school. And then on the following Monday, I got a phone call that we actually were going to have a surplus. So it looks like they've closed their books and they actually had a surplus over at the elementary school.
Yeah.
So they've requested that we put that money aside. So once it's certified to free cash, that we put it aside in the stabilization fund or when they have a time when they need it in their capital. But that was a positive. that they actually ran a little bit of a surplus over there at the elementary school.
Yeah, when you look at the budget numbers you sent out, it looked like they were gonna have some money remaining there. In a couple of different categories and stuff, significant dollars. Which is good.
It is, yeah, and they're gonna have some capital needs over there, so that'll be good to be able to utilize that funding for their capital needs.
And does that have to go before, town meeting to move that money like that, Cody, or how does that work?
Yeah, so they, they are, the elementary school is a department of the town, just like, the highway department or any, the police department. Elementary school is just like, one of those departments. So, when they have a surplus per se, we'll call it a surplus. It's just like any of our other departments that, didn't spend their full budget, which we rely on, right? We need our departments to not spend
Right.
their full budgets.
Right.
Because that ends up being our free cash and how we fund these items. So, I'm certainly, it's a positive that they had, some excess funds there, but we kind of expect some excess funds because that's how we fund our capital items. And so they are just like any other department. Silver Lake, they have their own E&D account, which is basically their version of free cash where they would keep it and then they fund their own capital items. But the elementary school, just same thing goes back to our free cash. Once it's certified, we, through town meeting, through your recommendation, the Board of Selectmen's would be an appropriation process. So, what we'll end up recommending likely is to either, if they have capital requests for fiscal 26, would be to just use that money, right, in that amount for those. If they don't have capital requests that meet that amount, then maybe we put the whatever's remaining in the stabilization fund for that specific purpose, or something along those lines.
So we can earmark that within the stabilization fund for the school?
Yeah, we can. Yep.
Okay.
But we don't have to, and that's one thing I do. It's it would be a good kind of a good showing to them, and good form of partnership. But it's, again, they're just another department of the town. We'll get one free cash number at the end of the, hopefully in October, and that's the free cash of the town of Halifax, and town meeting appropriates as as they see fit. So technically we could appropriate all of that to the fire department or whatever it may be. We're just trying to be good partners with the elementary school.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
For that, good to hear. Okay, anybody have anything else you want to discuss?
Well, I'll give you 8 more minutes. We'll be 2 hours in here, Jim.
Well, we had a lot on our plate for this one.
We did, and it's good to clean things up. Got a lot of things answered. I thought very, very productive.
Yep, that was a good call. Good call. All right. So with that said, we'll close out that that agenda item at this time. If there is nothing else, let's how we have a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Thank you. Frank.
Second,
Thank you, Cheryl. Roll call vote. EJ.
Yes.
Thank you, Frank.
Yes to adjourn, please.
Thank you, sir. Cheryl.
yes.
Thank you, and I'm a yes also. So with that, thank you everybody for putting the time in this evening. And unless something comes up, we'll talk on the 15th of August.
All right, have a good
Enjoy your
vacation.
vacation.
Thank you.
Thanks. Take care.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night.